And Dana Osgood is tracking that storm. Dana, we already have some closings and cancellations coming in for this.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, Brian and Amanda. This is a very dynamic storm. We've been talking about it a lot over the past couple of days, and the precip is finally starting to arrive. But this is the whole storm here behind me. It's a very robust looking storm, giving snow all the way out in the Midwest to severe weather down south. Now here in Maine, we're just going to kind of get a mess from this system, but it is still going to be very impactful. We're just starting to see those snow showers begin to move into northern and western Maine. It's going to take a little while for the layer to saturate. So over the next couple of hours is when we're first going to start to see some of that precipitation, which is going to overspread overnight as well. Now, I mentioned earlier on that we had a lot of watches and warnings here, winter storm warnings, high wind warnings, and flood watches and warnings right next to the coastline, as well as offshore seeing hurricane force wind warnings. So I'll talk about all of this because it's kind of a lot to cover with this storm. So first things first, when we get into the next couple of hours, it's going to take a little bit for the interior to transition from snow into rain rather, because we have this southeasterly flow. So the warmer water, that's going to help the coast transition from snow to rain very, very quickly, but it's going to take the interior a little bit longer. So this is Tuesday at 10 p.m. The precip is pushing into the Bangor area. Most of us seeing pretty heavy snow at this time, with the exception of the immediate coastline, which is going to switch over into rain. By the time we get to just after midnight, most of us are going to see precipitation at this point. The rain-snow line has pushed into the Lewiston area. However, down east coastline is still going to be in snow at this time, but it's going to be heavy precipitation. Whether you're receiving rain or snow, it's all going to be very heavy precipitation. Now, this is right around Wednesday at 5 a.m. The rain-snow line has pushed into the Bangor area, so heavy rain south of the Bangor area and heavy snow up north. And then as we get towards the end of this system, most of us are going to transition into rain, with the exception of the highest mountain peaks are probably going to stay snow until the very end, if ending with just a little bit of freezing rain. But most of us here are going to transition from that heavy snow into that heavy rain at some point overnight tonight. So this is Wednesday at 8 a.m. We are starting to see some clearing at this point in southwestern Maine, but we are still going to see the impacts of this storm into the early morning with power outages and issues with flooding. Now, as we get to around midday tomorrow, most of us are going to be drying out at this time, with the exception of a little bit of precipitation left in northern Maine. And then throughout the day on Wednesday and into Thursday as well, a couple of scattered showers, but overall most of us will be drying out by this time. So it is going to be a relatively fast moving system, which is good because it allows us to do some cleanup before we have another system coming in for the weekend. So here's our forecast for snow, since a lot of us are going to be starting with snow. If you're in the pink and purple colors, that's overall where you'll see a net gain of snow even after the transition to rain. However, if you're in the blue colors, you're probably going to lose this snow, as well as the snow that we received from the storm over the weekend as well. So the highest amount of snow that we have that's going to melt, along with the highest amount of precipitation falling, is going to be in this white shaded area right here, which is the most likely flood zone. Now, there is always a chance of flooding outside of this zone, but from the kind of southern coastline up into Augusta and Lewiston area, that's where we are seeing the most likely scenarios for flooding. But just because you're outside of this flood zone, there is still a chance of flooding in your area as well. Now, we also have the wind gusts to attend with. So we have the melting snow along with the rain falling. We also have a lot of heavy winds, high winds gusts rather, especially late Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. Peak wind gusts around 60 miles per hour, especially along the coastline and in the mountains as well. So this is going to inevitably cause some power outages and some issues with trees falling as well. Now, we do get a little bit lighter in terms of wind as we get later into the day, and it still will remain a little bit breezy, but the heaviest wind is going to be overnight into the early morning. And if you want to experience some deja vu, we have a very similar setup coming up for Saturday as well, which unfortunately doesn't leave us a lot of time to do some cleanup after this storm. So here's some kind of headlines to summarize everything that I was saying. So the rain and the snow melt, especially the area that I pointed to earlier, mainly the southern coast and the interior, is going to be at the highest risk for flash flooding. The high wind gusts will cause power outages, as well as coastal flooding, especially around high tide on Wednesday morning, which is around 8 or 9 a.m., which will also cause blowing rain and snow from those high wind gusts in the interior. Then overall, we're looking at less river flooding than the last storm, though, because a lot of that rain will be in the more southern areas. So marine forecast seas very high, 7 to 17 feet, and gusts up to 60 knots, possibly a little bit higher off the shoreline as well. So here's a look at our 7-day forecast. So we have that storm coming through tonight into tomorrow. We don't have a lot of time for cleanup before we have a very similar looking system coming in for Saturday as well. So that's going to make it a little bit difficult for cleanup, Brian and Amanda. But overall, I think it's not going to be quite as bad as the storm from December, but I don't want to diminish the fact that this is going to be a very impactful system.
Yeah, we weren't joking when there was a lot to track there. Dana, thank you for
Absolutely.
walking us through it.